Teslarati says that SpaceX's upgraded Super Heavy booster was recently hit by an explosion and fireball. It had to be taken back to the factory to be repaired. On July 13th, about a day and a half after the accident, the company's CEO Elon Musk said that the rocket would have to be taken off of Starbase's orbital launch pad so that it could be looked at and fixed. Welcome to Techmo. In today's video, we will be taking a look at the latest news regarding the failed launching of SpaceX's Super Heavy booster. But before we make it to the video, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more premium content and hit the notification bell to be the first to watch our videos. During the most recent round of testing for the rocket, a SpaceX Super Heavy booster was rocked by a massive explosion and subjected to many fires at the launch pad. Nonetheless, a fireball for B7 turns out to be very mild in comparison. You may recall that SpaceX destroyed or exploded 8 spaceship prototypes in order to accomplish the landing of SN-15 in May of last year. To tell you the truth, rockets are packed with very explosive materials that have to be burned in a carefully managed fashion in order for them to be able to overcome the gravitational pull of the Earth and send quite heavy cargo into space. When their constructions are subjected to extreme loads while at the same time trying to be as light as possible, many things have the potential to go wrong. And once that happens, there is no turning back. A large amount of testing, including 1 Raptor thrust simulation test and 4 cryogenic tests or cryoproofs, has already been carried out on Super Heavy Rocket 7. Since its third return to the pad, SpaceX has conducted a number of additional mysterious tests, none of which appear to involve the loading of cryogenic propellant. However, the testing that preceded the most recent explosion appeared to be a little bit different than usual, with more activity from Booster 7's Raptors before a spin prime test led to a large fireball exploding from underneath the launch mount. During a spin prime test, high-pressure gases are injected into the turbo pumps, and then the pumps are spun up to their maximum speed to simulate an engine starting up. However, the ignition is not actually turned on. This is not the first time that SpaceX has conducted this test on Raptors, but it is the first time that it has done so on the launch mount with all 33 engines operating simultaneously. When the vehicle was fueled, it created tremendous venting, which could be seen from underneath the rocket before the enormous explosion happened. The rocket was fueled during the test with cryogenic liquid methane and liquid oxygen propellant. This appears to have had the unexpected consequence of leading to a buildup of gaseous methane under the launch mount, which then managed to find a source of ignition. Later, after what appeared to be a log stump from the booster, a fire broke out near the base of the launch tower, and the fire burned through a trailer. In a short Twitter conversation under the explosion video, an astronomer named Jonathan McDowell wrote to Musk about the incident. The big picture is that it's still early days with Raptor 2, and I guess we're still learning. I hope you have success with the analysis. In addition, Musk expressed the notion that the issue was brought on by a buildup of unburned propellant that was released from the 33 Raptor 2 engines that were supposed to power the spaceship rockets into orbit. Musk reminded his supporters that the process of engineering a launch vehicle is not an easy one. Evaporation of cryogenic fuel presents an additional issue, since it creates a potential for an explosion of fuel air and partly oxygenated atmospheres, similar to those seen on Earth. In response to a follower who questioned whether or not it would be prudent to follow NASA's example, during the Space Shuttle era, the agency utilized radial outward firing igniters, also known as rockets or sparklers, to detonate escape fuel before it could collect. Musk stated that SpaceX would follow suit, but he also suggested that engineers working for SpaceX may have gone too far with this specific test. In the future, one of the things we will be doing stuff like this. However, this particular problem was only present during the spin start test for the engine. Raptor has a complicated initialization procedure. In the future, we won't perform a spin test on all 33 engines at the time. Even though this failure occurred, and there may be more and more failures in the future, simply because Starship is a new system attempting to do novel things, it is possible that more and more failures will occur. The incredibly hefty B7 is unquestionably breaking a substantial amount of view ground. There have never been more than 6 Raptor V1 engines lit at the same time by SpaceX, and the company has never tested more than 3 engines at a time on a Super Heavy rocket. However, we now have the superpower Raptor 2, which is expected to change all of that. In point of fact, the construction of qualifying shipment and installation of 33 new Raptor 2 engines on Super Heavy B7 was already a remarkable achievement that resulted in the production of the theoretically most powerful rocket booster ever assembled. During the 6 weeks when Rocket 7 was back in the factory assembly area, SpaceX utilized that time to finish attaching aero cover surfaces known as chimes or strakes, automobile-sized grid fins, Starlink internet dishes, and most critically, 33 improved Raptor V2 engines. Combined Booster 7 has the potential to provide up to 7,600 metric tons of thrust, which is equivalent to about 16.8 million foot-pounds at or before liftoff. Importantly, SpaceX also completed the installation of most of Rocket 7's Raptor heat shields over the same time frame, a task that took Booster 4 closer to half a year to do. This was accomplished in just 6 weeks. A minimum of 1 wet dress rehearsal for Booster 7 is required to be finished prior to the beginning of the actual static fires. WDRS, an exercise that faithfully imitates a launch but holds itself just before the moment when the engine starts up. A full static fire with a full load of propellant, simulating most pre-launch conditions, will likely be one of the last main goals of any static fire campaign. For a full wet dress rehearsal WDR, which also has never been done with Super Heavy, SpaceX would need to fill the booster with 3,400 tons or 7.5 million pounds of propellant. When operating at maximum thrust, 33 Raptor engines would probably consume approximately 25 tons or approximately 55,000 pounds of propellant per second. Hence, an enormous quantity of propellant will be required in any case. Explosions are the only way for Elon Musk and SpaceX to acquire new knowledge in the rocket industry, which is otherwise characterized by a complete lack of precedent. Regardless of whether or not the explosion of Rocket 7 will delay the first Starship's voyage into orbit and when will it fly, the firm is currently evaluating the damage to the prototype, as well as the large launch pad and tower that the corporation uses. Elon Musk, the chief executive officer of SpaceX, is optimistic that the first orbital flight of the company's spaceship could still take place within the next several weeks. When asked when the orbital test launch could take place, Musk responded that it could take place as soon as the following month, provided the testing goes well. After all, the CEO has been promising the same thing at least since October of the previous year, so we're not going to hold our breath on this one. Thankfully, a lot has happened since then. And this time around, SpaceX is working towards the launch with regulatory approval from the FAA in hand, a certification that also came with 75 environmental requirements that it needs to meet. In any case, as was stated in the most recent interview with Tim Dobb Daily Astronaut, it is not a problem if you destroy an engine since you have a high production rate and a number of engines that will follow the one that was destroyed. We've blown up at least 20 and possibly over 30 engines, and we have melted probably 50 chambers and possibly more than 50 chambers altogether. Thus, the B7's explosion may have been a good thing as SpaceX is always conducting tests and learning from them. Back to the launch schedule, given Musk's ever-optimistic and overly ambitious promises, it does not exactly look like we will see Starships go orbital in the next month, but we are certainly excited for when the day finally comes. So that's all for today's video. If you liked this video, then give it a thumbs up, and if you want to watch more videos like this one, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications so that you will always be notified.